Yeah. First, let me say something about Freakin' Candy's book. I do not recommend that book. Prefer that no one ever read it. It's only marginally better than Percy Graves' work. Criticisms of his 16 Crucified Saviors, which you can find at the secular web, apply almost as much to Freakin' Candy. Their research is on key parts shoddy, and their source citations minimal and problematic. There's no way to know when they've gotten something right or wrong without redoing all their research, which makes their book useless. And that's the same complaint I had against Graves' book. To figure out what's in there that's even correct, you have to completely redo the whole work, and why even read the book if you're just going to do all the work yourself anyway?
Well, I've done a count recently of 1,200 sources on the resurrection, everything published since 1975 in German, French, and English. And I went back and I looked how many of these scholars who hold university chairs, for example, how many of them who are not Christians, who do not hold to the resurrection, how many of them would say that in any way the mystery gods are a potential inspiration for Christianity? And I can count the number of skeptics on one hand. I can count them on one hand out of 1,200 scholars.
It is true that accounts exist of pagan gods who rose from the dead. However, none of these predate Christianity. None of them are contemporary with Jesus. In fact, the first doesn't occur until Adonis, one of the pagan gods, and he is about 150. Now, the religion of Adonis is much older than Christianity. It predates Jesus. But the part about Adonis coming back from the dead postdates Jesus by about 120 years. And he's the earliest. So, who's copying who if we're going to say someone's copying?
The first section of the hit film Zeitgeist proposes a theory that many people have accepted without proper investigation. This theory is as follows. An ancient brotherhood assembled the Old and New Testament based on astrotheology and pagan myth. This theory purports that the historical Jesus didn't actually exist, but was an assemblage of pagan deities and astrological symbology. This film is going to thoroughly refute the theory and put it to rest once and for all. Before we begin though, you must realize that the Zeitgeist view is a real minority view. I contacted the noted scholar Mike Lacona to get his conclusion on the belief Zeitgeist offers. His response is as follows. There are as many non-Christian sources who mention Jesus within 150 years of his life as there are who mention the Roman emperor contemporary with Jesus' ministry within 150 years of his life. Those who propose that Jesus never existed must reasonably account for these sources. While those who try to believe their arguments are reasonable, they have not convinced many. In fact, I am not aware of a single widely respected scholar in the world who holds the position that Jesus never existed. Even critical atheist scholars such as Richard Carrier and Dr. Bob Price have rejected Zeitgeist sources such as Acharya S.'s The Christ Conspiracy and Percy Graves' 16 Crucified Saviors. As Dr. Bob Price remarks, she is quick to state as bald fact what turn out to be, once one chases down her sources, either wild speculation or complex inference from a chain of complicated data open to many interpretations. One of the most intriguing claims made repeatedly in these books is that among the mythical predecessors of Jesus as a crucified god were the Buddha, the blue-skinned Krishna, and Dionysus. Is there any basis to these claims which Murdoch just drops like a ton of bricks? Again, she does not explain where they come from, much less why no available book on Buddha, Krishna, or Dionysus contains a crucifixion account. When Murdoch speaks of the Christ Conspiracy, she means it. She really believes that people got together and cooked up early Christianity like a network sitcom. Richard Carrier states, the world's 16 crucified saviors, or Christianity before Christ, is unreliable, but no comprehensive critique exists. Most scholars immediately recognize many of his findings as unsupported and dismiss Graves as useless. Graves often does not distinguish his opinions and theories from what his sources and evidence actually state. Graves does little or no source analysis or formal textual criticism. Now that you have a brief understanding of what Christian and non-Christian scholars think of Zeitgeist, let's examine the film's claims of the supposed similarities to Jesus. They first bring up Horus. Now, December 25th is of no relevance because the New Testament does not mention the date. Most scholars hold that Jesus was born in the spring. It wasn't until halfway through the 4th century that December 25th was added by the Roman Catholic Church. This says nothing about Christian origins because Christianity was around for roughly 300 years already. Moreover, nowhere in the Egyptian record does it specify the birth date of Horus, son of Isis and Osiris. Mere speculation is offered for the birth date of the other Horuses. There is no evidence that Isis was a virgin in the myth. The onus of proof is on Zeitgeist. Seth dismembered Osiris, then Isis put his dead body back together and had intercourse with it. In some versions, she used a handmade phallus since she wasn't able to find that part of her husband, so it was not a virgin birth. In the original story it says, quote, "She drew from him his essence according to a hymn to Osiris and the legend of the origin of Horus. Since she drew from him his essence or sperm, there is no virgin birth." As Egyptian scholar Richard Wilkinson remarks, through her magic, Isis revivified the sexual member of Osiris and became pregnant by him, eventually giving birth to their child Horus, unquote. And as Frankos Dunand urges, quote, "After having sexual intercourse, in the form of a bird, with the dead god she restored to life, she gave birth," unquote. This does not constitute as a parallel if you know the New Testament. Since this is so weak, Acharya S. claims Isis is the constellation of Virgo, the Virgin. When pressed for documentation, no substantiation is offered for the Isis-Virgo connection at all. In regard to Isis being called Isis Mary, I could find no scholarly information to substantiate this. I went to Graves' work to see if that's what Acharya was referencing. Graves writes, "The Virgin with her God-begotten child, they are represented on the Hindu zodiac and on the ancient Egyptian planispheres," unquote. So in other words, Acharya assumes because Isis is Horus's mother, and because Virgo is in the zodiac, therefore Isis is a virgin. This is so dishonest and in no way makes Isis' name Isis Mary. Another alternative was raised in a dialogue I had with a Zeitgeist defender. He claimed her name was Mayurt in the Egyptian Book of the Dead. I went to Alfred Wiedemann, an expert Egyptologist who wrote Religion of the Ancient Egyptians. He writes, "Come at all, I am the cow Mayurt." The effect, the writing was made by the cow, Isis, as identified with Mayurt, for her son Horus. Mayurt is the celestial cow, the goddess who gave birth to the sky when nothing else existed. That is where the idea of Isis Mary comes from. Again, it has nothing to do with the name Mary in the Bible, and Mayurt isn't even spelled similar to Mary, and it doesn't even sound the same. All Zeitgeist is doing here is playing word games. As for the Star in the East claim, since there is no such myth in the Horus story, Acharya goes to astrotheology and claims that the 3 stars in Orion's belt align with Sirius, or the supposed star in the east on December 25th, which in turn point to the sun's birth, or Horus's birth. First, there is no evidence the ancient Egyptians interpreted the occurrence and assigned it to Horus's birth. Secondly, her thesis is false in that it is impossible for the sun to align with Sirius and the 3 stars in Orion on December 25th because they are not above the horizon at the same time. But even if she was right, and they all aligned on December 25th, and the Egyptian Horus story refers to this as an account of his birth, since the Bible says Jesus was born in the spring and doesn't number the wise men, it makes it irrelevant. There was a form of Horus the child, but there is no mention of Horus being a prodigal teacher in Massey's summary. Isis just hid Horus. The only time the age 12 is even relevant at all is that the child passes from adolescence to adulthood. There is no bibliographic data suggesting Horus began any sort of ministry at all, much less at the age of 30. As for baptism by Anup, the claim comes from the book Ancient Egypt, The Light of the World by Massey, page 795, which reads, "Look upon me,